Hi, I'm Shishan Movsessian from Holistic Psychotherapy. You can find me on my website, shishan.com, or my Facebook page, Holistic Psychotherapy. I've got the links below in this video. I'm going to talk today about 3 essential practices for staying connected and not shutting down. And I feel that this is an important follow-on from my video earlier on compassionate presence. I want to talk about this because most of us aren't practiced at attending to our own needs. Focus is often fixed on other, and part of compassionate presence is bringing our attention back in. And when we work at reconnecting, we aren't just addressing our capacity to be present with our pain or unaddressed hurt. We're also cultivating our ability to be fully present in our hearts in order to be receptive to love, to tenderness and support, and to deepen our relationships and relating from a more authentic place in ourselves. Disconnect can be a common experience for many of us and can appear at those times when we may have had an initial hurt and we don't really know how to respond to it. And sometimes we can get caught up in our heads around whether we should actually respond, whether we should feel hurt. And there's a working out that happens that can completely dismiss the initial hurt, whatever we actually felt, the truth of that happened in our hearts or in our body. And this is where disconnect happens. We disconnect our head from our heart and our bodies. And then it's a time where we're not really fully in our authentic wellness. So part of this work in cultivating compassionate presence is learning about how to respond earlier. And that's my first practice, is noticing when we've been hurt by something and not waiting too long, trusting that impulse to respond with compassion, to acknowledge that, yeah, we were hurt. That was something that validating it is probably the best word for it. So that's the first thing, is to respond earlier, to avoid that disconnect, that numbing out that can happen when we dismiss something and we don't address it. And of course, this is how illness happens. When over time we don't address accumulated hurt or pain, we can shut out, and that can manifest as illness in our bodies. So responding earlier with compassion strengthens our capacity to be present with ourselves. And when we can do that with ourselves, then this has a flow-on effect on our families, our relationships, in our workplace. And hopefully there is something in this on a global level where we are responding earlier to pain that's there in the world. So my second practice, which is connected to this responding earlier, is to reach out for help. Our tendency when we have been hurt or we feel pain is to feel we have to kind of do it ourselves, we have to tough it out. And I feel this is such a false belief. I feel that when we do respond, it's such a relief to actually speak up. And often we get validated for it, and it empowers us. And, you know, we sometimes don't know how to deal with our hurt. And so reaching for help is a way of learning and getting guidance around being compassionate, learning how we can attend to our hurt and our feelings of pain, as well as learning about how we respond to keep our hearts open when we feel love and we feel tender. And so our vulnerability really is the doorway to our own power, to our true power, and feeling our personal power. And when we connect with others, our brain releases that wonderful feel-good hormone, oxytocin. And that creates a feeling of peace, of that things are going to be okay. And we naturally produce this when we are hugged, or when we have a massage, or when we meditate or pray. But we can also release oxytocin when we have one of those wonderful, heartfelt conversations with a dear friend who really sees us and hears us. So there's lots of good things about connection and getting help. So the third practice that I want to talk about, and I think is the most important, is that when we're struggling with something, whether it's physical or emotional, try not to resist it in that moment, or deny it, or medicate it. Try instead in that moment to love it, to be with it. Try speaking to your inner experience directly with kindness and tenderness. If it helps, imagine how you might speak to a child who is in distress or in pain, and let that be your guide. And you may find that initially it'll be uncomfortable because we're not used to that, where our tendency mostly is to dismiss or to speak with criticism or judgment when we heard about something. So when we speak with tenderness, it's going to take practice. When we speak with kindness and to turn our attention inwards with compassion, that's when we really shift. That's when our hearts open and we can deepen our feeling in ourselves, towards ourselves and to others. And for some, what can arise from that tenderness is our own longing to hear tender words from another, or to feel kindness and compassion from another. And definitely part of reaching out, that's part of that practice in reaching out. But compassionate presence is also about learning to soothe ourselves when we don't have a partner, or when there isn't someone in that moment to soothe or care for us. And as we do this, we're building our own resilience and our capacity to attend to our deeper feelings, our inner truth. And from that place, we are attracting a partner from our own self-love. I hope this has been helpful. I would love to hear your questions or your comments. Please do write to me, and thank you for listening. Namaste.